Okay, hi guys. As I mentioned on one of my brewing videos, I had an airlock blowout, which I'm sure you guys have had before, when the beer comes up through the airlock and fills up the airlock and it spills out all over the top of your fermenter. So I briefly showed you in my last brewing video what I do when this happens. I have a rubber bung there with a hole in it and a piece of tubing that I've put through the hole. And I fastened it onto the top of my fermenter. Make sure you get a paper towel and go in this little area here and get out all the beer that's sitting in there. Because when you pull off your airlock, all that beer is going to fall into your fermenter. And I would imagine that all that beer that's been sitting there for God knows how long would be contaminated. So get a paper towel, fold it in half, and just soak it all up out of this crevice here so that when you pull off your airlock, you don't have rotten beer falling into your pail. So this tube comes down, and I got it going into just a wine bottle, and I filled the wine bottle up with water. Now I didn't fill it up all the way, and I've only got the tube down in there about an inch. Yeah, you don't want to push it all the way down to the bottom, because the more water that the air has to go through, the harder it's going to be to escape as a bubble, and you'll end up with more pressure inside your fermenter than what you want. So just put the tube down about an inch below the surface. Now you can't see mine because the water, you can just see it there. You see the water is yellow because some of the, like I said, I had a blowout, so some of the beer has come out through the tube and blown out through the tube and down into here. But this is a better way to handle that situation. What I used to do is just take the airlock off and clean it, but it ends up having to do that about 5 or 6 times over the course of a few days. And every time you take it off, you're risking contamination. So this is a better way to do it, and it's a perfectly good airlock. As you can see, it's bubbling away. And you don't have to go back to the airlock when your blowout stops, because this is a perfectly good airlock. It's not going to let any air in, just as long as nobody accidentally tips it over and removes the tube. As long as that tube is under the surface, the water there, you're fine. You'll have no problems with any air getting in. So that's what I do when I have an airlock blowout, and you just pop off your old airlock and you stick this on and you're good. Okay? A friend of mine on YouTube, he goes by the handle of Murden2002, made a video on how to make wine out of just juice that you buy out of the store. And it's called inmate brewing, because they used to do something similar in jail cells, and the inmates used to make wine this way, using toilets and bread from the cafeteria. But anyway, all you need to do now, you might want to make wine, but you don't want to buy the equipment. You're not sure if you're ready to do it. This is what got me started making actual wine, actual table wine that I've showed you how to do on my videos. This is what gave me the courage to do it, because it's quite simple actually. Now, making actual table wine is a couple more steps involved, but as you saw by the videos, it's not complicated at all. All you're doing is you're taking a fruit juice and you are adding yeast to it, okay? And the yeast is going to basically, well, it's going to infect it, but it's going to infect it in a controlled way that's going to create a fermentation process which will create the alcohol. Now, you have to have a way of letting the carbon dioxide escape without letting any air back into the container. That's where you have to have an airlock. Now, if you don't have an airlock like I do, I have the advantage of being a home brewer. I've got a few of these lying around, and I actually attached it to a lid that I can just screw right onto here. But if you don't have one of these, don't worry. I'll show you at the end. I'll show you what to do, how to fabricate an airlock. Okay, so here's what you do. Get yourself a large container of some sort of fruit juice. It has to be sweetened with sugar. It has to be a sugary juice. It can't have artificial NutraSweet or anything like that. It's got to be an actual sugary drink. I've got some cranberry cocktail. You could use grape juice, any kind of juice that's sweet. All right, the sweeter the better, actually. Get yourself a package of brewer's yeast, and if you can't find brewer's yeast, then just buy baker's yeast from the supermarket. It will work. Okay, I don't know if it'll be quite the same, but it will work. So what we have to do first is remove the lid and take some of the juice out of the container to allow room for the fermentation to take place. Okay, so let's do that. Remove the lid. Pour some of the juice out. We want to leave about maybe 2 inches. There. Because it's going to get really busy in here. The bubbles are going to foam up and you want some room for this to happen. Okay, now don't breathe into it. Don't spit or drink out of it or anything like that. This is already sanitized. You don't have to do any sanitizing. Take your yeast and put it in. Put on your airlock. And again, I'll discuss, if you don't have an actual airlock like this, I'll show you how to make one. Okay. Pop off the top. Got some water over here. Fill it up halfway. And snap on the lid. So there. In less than a minute, we have created a situation where we're going to have, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have wine. Now, it's not going to be clear. It will be cloudy. There are some things you can do to it that will clear it. When this is finished, we'll talk about some things you can do to make it clearer or to stabilize it so it won't ferment further. But right now, I just want to keep this simple. This is going to ferment. It's going to turn into wine, and it's basically, that's all you have to do. It's very, very simple. So I'm going to leave this. Now, as far as the airlock goes, I have an actual airlock because I brew, so I have some of these. If you don't have one of these, the best thing for you to do, you can use the method at the beginning of this video that I showed you how to use that rubber bung with the tube. If you can get those materials from somewhere and put it into a bottle of water so that stuff can come out but no air can get in. Or you can get, I would recommend, and this is what Murden recommends, is a condom. If you can go out and buy yourself a 3-pack of condoms, and you just you stretch a condom over the mouth of the bottle, of the juice bottle. Okay, so there's a nice, good seal around the edge, right? And then you watch it for the next 8 to 12 or 24 hours. As soon as the condom starts to inflate and start to get large, you pinch the tip of it and you poke it with a pin. Probably the only time you'd ever do that. And you poke it with a pin, and so you're making 2 holes through the end of it, and then that will allow the carbon dioxide to escape from this container through the holes of the condom without letting any air into the container that will contaminate it and make it go rotten. When the condom deflates, you know your fermentation is finished. You can remove the condom, put the lid back on, and either you drink it or you put it in the fridge. Okay? Make sure that if you put it in the fridge and if you're not going to drink it right away, that you, every once in a while, 1 or 2 times a day, you go in and you just loosen off the lid and let any pressure out, because there might be some slight fermentation going on in there. It could create some CO2 pressure in there. Very simple, very easy way to make wine. I'm going to set this aside. And it's just going to sit there for a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, however long it takes. I'll have a very crude version of some sort of wine. And when it's done, I'll taste it, and we'll talk about some ways that you can improve the flavor, clarify it a little bit, and stop the fermentation completely so that you can store it for long periods of time. One way to stop fermentation completely, just as a shortcut here, is to freeze it. Once this is frozen solid, it kills all the yeast cells, and then it will no longer ferment. Then you can stick it in the fridge and leave it for as long as you want. You can also sweeten it a little bit with some sugar right before you drink it. I mean, it's just an experiment, really. That's the thing. I mean, this is what got me into making wine. I thought, Jesus, this is that simple. And of course, making wine's got a few extra steps, along the way, but that's what makes it into clear table wine. refined and, you know, looks nice. So it's just a simple little experiment that you can do at home that might educate you a little bit and give you the courage to maybe move forward and make real wine. All right? Thanks, Murden, and thanks for watching. See you.